In philosophy, ontic is physical, real, or factual existence. Ontic describes what is there as opposed to the nature or properties of that being. To illustrate, Roger Bacon, observing that all languages are built upon a common grammar, stated that they share a foundation of ontically anchored linguistic structures. Martin Heidegger posited the concept of Sorge, or caring, as the fundamental concept of the intentional being, and presupposed an ontological significance that distinguishes ontological being from mere thinghood of an ontic being. He uses the German word Dasein for a being that is capable of ontology, that is, recursively comprehending properties of the very fact of its own being. For Heidegger, ontical signifies concrete, specific realities, whereas ontological signifies deeper underlying structures of reality. Ontological objects or subjects have an ontical dimension, but they also include aspects of being like self-awareness, evolutionary vestiges, future potentialities, and networks of relationship. Nikolai Hartmann distinguishes among ontology, ontics, and metaphysics. Ontology concerns the categorical analysis of entities by means of the knowledge categories able to classify them. Ontics refers to a pre-categorical and pre-objectual connection which is best expressed in the relation to transcendent acts. And metaphysics is that part of ontics of that part of ontology which concerns the residue of being that cannot be rationalized further according to categories. Usage in philosophy of science. Harold Atmanspacher writes extensively about the philosophy of science, especially as it relates to chaos theory, determinism, causation, and stochasticity. He explains that ontic states describe all properties of a physical system exhaustively. In an earlier paper, Atmanspacher portrays the difference between an epistemic perspective of a system and an ontic perspective. Philosophical discourse traditionally distinguishes between ontology and epistemology and generally enforces this distinction by keeping the two subject areas separated. However, the relationship between the two areas is of central importance to physics and philosophy of physics. For instance, many measurement-related problems force us to consider both our knowledge of the states and observables of a system and its states and observables, independent of such knowledge. This applies to quantum systems in particular. Usage in philosophy of critical realism. The British philosopher Roy Bhaskar, who is closely associated with the philosophical movement of critical realism, writes, "I differentiate the ontic from the ontological. I employ the former to refer to whatever pertains to being generally, rather than some distinctively philosophical theory of it, so that in this sense, that of the ontic one, we can speak of the ontic presuppositions of a work of art, a joke or a strike as much as a theory of knowledge, and, within this rubric, too, the intransitive objects of some specific, historically determinate, scientific investigation, the ontic too. The ontic too is always specified, and only identified, by its relation, as the intransitive object of some or other particular transitive process of inquiry. It is cognitive process, and level-specific, whereas the ontological is not. Ruth Groff offers this expansion of Bhaskara's note above. Ontic too is an abstract way of denoting the object domain of a particular scientific area, field, or inquiry. E.g., molecules feature in the ontic too of chemistry. He's just saying that the scientific undertaking itself is not one of the objects of said, most narrowly construed, immediate object domain. So chemistry itself is not part of the ontic too of chemistry.